Alright, man, let's get this started. Going live in 3. Well, we're already live, but starting it up in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody else in between, my name is Ashton Gene Lewis, and this is the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. One and only, by the way, as far as I know. I will repeat, I have outlasted at least one podcast, and it is the Broke Boy Podcast that exists out there in the world somewhere on Apple iTunes, which, by the way, we're going to work on getting ourselves back on. I don't know why I just hard cut that music out. That was so weird. Anyway, we got a lot of stuff to do. I got a lot of stuff to do. You got stuff to do. So we're just going to dive right into breaking down the games. I'm not going to talk about what happened last week and why it was so weird, but we will start off at the top discussing all the things that went horribly wrong for a series of people. And, you know, some I'm happy about it going wrong for. We'll talk about that in the first game that we cover, and then some people not so much. Highly invested in the failure and success of a lot of football teams, not necessarily any players. Never root for player failure except in one case. So it's week 7 of the NFL season, and it finally happened. It happened, guys. The week where Vegas collects all their money back happened. And if you are a gambling person or a person who puts some shekels down on things, I do sometimes. Anyway, the picks that I put on the show are for a pick'em league that I'm in, and it's a way for this whole podcast is just a form of accountability for my ESPN pick'em league that I have, but it's also a way for me to like ramble about stuff that's going on in the world in terms of like sports and everything like that. So forgive me if that is what ends up happening. Actually, can I get the better one, the bigger one, the one that has there we go, the one that has my face more centered. Anyway, a bunch of stuff happened. Mainly was people thinking one thing was going to happen betting-wise, and then the opposite happening. So that was fun for literally no one except if you're a bookmaker in Vegas. A lot of people made their money back. I, in particular, I'll tell you how bad it was. I predicted 3 games out of 13 correct, and I ended up increasing my percentile on the ESPN charts. So that's usually pretty bad. I got 3 games right, and apparently that was better than like 90% of people, or like 50% of people at the bare minimum that selected games this past week. So that lets you know exactly where we are as a collective in terms of watching football. So we're going to break down and talk about everything that happened in Week 7. I'm not going to do any funny stats, all that kind of stuff like that. I'll save that for an episode when I had more time to prepare for it. As usual, life is lifing hard. I had a friend's wedding that I missed this past weekend because of a bachelor party that I had to go to. And at the bachelor party, I lost a part of one of my glasses that if you are at home and you can actually see my full face and stuff like that, you'll probably notice that I'm missing, like, my glasses are taped together, and it is because your boy was swimming in a pool at the Airbnb where we were at, and then life happened. I jumped in with my glasses on, and then the lenses, one of the lenses popped out of my glasses, so I've had to come back. I had to go one-eyed. I wore shades at one point, looked like a douche. I had one lens in at one point where I just had my glasses on with one lens. As a matter of fact, they're like right here. So you tell me in the comments which one are you cooler with. So the problem with me wearing them like this is that the difference in vision actually makes my overall vision worse, even though I can see clearly. I can see perfectly fine with one eye, but unless I cover up this eye, I won't be able to like clearly see things as well as I would like to. But yeah, the other ones, they're like super taped up and I can see through them and stuff like that, even though they are like heavily scratched and gunk and stuff like that I can't get off. I have ordered new glasses, so your boy actually going to order new glasses. I went and got my new prescription. Apparently my eyes are stronger somehow. Don't know how that happened. At the age of 31, my body is improving. And I'm not a carrot guy, even though that, like, I've recently found out the carrot thing is like a myth or whatever. The beta carotene thing helping your vision improve is like a myth type of deal. Anyway, I think I'm going to do the show like this and see how many people notice retroactively. Anyway, we got a couple of things. We got a couple of things that went kind of weird. So we'll take the schedule from the top and work our way down. So Monday Night Football, even though this is the end of the week, I put the end and the beginning together. For some reason, I'm not doing the categories this week. I'm literally just talking about the games. Some of these are going to be short and simple. Some of them are going to be a little bit more complex. 49ers Vikings. So this is interesting. The last two games, because the 49ers did lose this game subsequently on a basically an interception on the game-winning drive from the Minnesota Vikings, because Cameron Bynum apparently is now the second coming of Ed Reed. So couldn't have seen that coming. Do follow Cameron Bynum on my personal and my burner account. He actually is like looks at my Instagram story sometimes, even though we don't follow each other. It's kind of weird. He's like super cool. He actually did a lot of work when Hawaii had, was it the earthquake or the tsunami? One of the two, because technically an earthquake does trigger a tsunami. It's just a water earthquake. Anyway, he did a lot of work to make sure that people ended up with food and resources and blankets to be able to keep themselves warm. By the way, if you're watching this, Fanatics is having a 65% off sale today. You use the promo code TREAT. Don't know how long it's going to last. If you're in the distant future, sorry, you probably missed that sale. If you're in the past, it's coming up. Actually, the first time I saw it was 2 days ago on October 24th. So if you're in the past watching this, first of all, don't know who wins the Super Bowl yet, but I do know, if you're far enough in the past, last year's Super Bowl champion was the Kansas City Chiefs. You're welcome. Make some money, split it with me. Send me some money in a... Find me. Come and find me somehow, some way in Houston, Texas. Anyway, or you can just put it in an envelope and leave it at my front door. The 49ers, 5-2 on the season so far. The Vikings, a team that I predicted to go winless, now on a bit of a streak. 3-4 overall in the year. So, a couple of things we need to talk about here. They still are being cursed by whatever evil demigod Kirk Cousins prayed to this past summer. That would be the ultimate plot twist. Like, after being the good Christian boy this whole time, he finally was just like, hey, motherfucker, I need a God that's going to make something happen for me. I'm out here playing pretty well, but I need a God that's going to take me to the next level. And then he just becomes like a pagan and starts sacrificing goats and stuff like that. And then in exchange for it, he has to have like a absolutely hilarious turnover almost every single game, which kind of in this situation, the turnover to start the game was just kind of stupid, decision-wise and how it looked. So it's not Jimmy Ward. It was... Yeah, it wasn't Jimmy Ward. Anyway, Jordan Addison's being manned up. It's complete man coverage. He's running a crosser across the middle of the field. He gets to the midfield area. The 49ers are in zone. They've all dropped. They're all the defenders, pretty much, except the D linemen, are past like the 10, 15-yard line because all the routes are deeper down the field. It sets up Addison in one-on-one coverage, and he's just like got, like, the DB is literally in Jordan Addison's pocket. I'm pretty sure he has Jordan's social security number now, and essentially what you end up seeing is he's manned up with them, running stride for stride with them. Kirk Cousins tries to throw a heavily contested catch. Jordan tries to get his arms extended out, and guys, this is why they test this at the combine. The DB's arms are longer, and they actually reach out and snag the ball away from Jordan Addison, and it becomes a turnover instantaneously. First drive of the game, 3 plays into the drive. That's the hilarious part. And then after that, it stops being funny, because then it starts being, hey, Brock Purdy was drafted Mr. Irrelevant. I don't know if you guys know that or not. He was the last pick in the draft when he was drafted. I don't know if anybody's told you that or anything lately, but you should know that. That's free information. I know insider stuff, really deep. Anyway, he started looking like his draft status. He started looking a little bit more like it. Actually, I would say probably still playing above his draft status as of now. But I mean, the multiple interceptions throughout the course of this game really put them in a hole overall. This is a one-possession game, like I said before. It came down to the final drive when it was all said and done, and it came down to Cameron Bynum making an absolutely ridiculous interception, and they still were in it. That is something that you can take away from this, because if you have been watching the Vikings this season, they are not the team you thought they were. They are not like significantly worse after having a lot of free agents leave, transitioning to KOC and everything like that. They are not what their record says they are, despite what Bill Parcells will try and tell you. They're 3-4, and they're very clearly like those 4 losses. They could have easily won those games. I'm not gonna sit here and say that I feel like they're about to turn a corner or anything like that, because guess what? We're in week 7 and we've got a long way to go. We're not even at the halfway point of the season. There are going to be teams that played really well that start playing poorly, and there are going to be teams that played really poorly that start playing pretty well in a lot of these situations. That's how you get random wins that we'll talk about a little bit later on throughout the course of this game. But if you're a Niners fan, obviously Niners fans, like, they are so dramatic. Anyway, the Niners defense, they did their job. Like, at the end of the day, like, the final score in this game tells you everything that you need to know. Same thing with the Vikings, man. Like, when it came down to it, like, they kept this game ridiculously close. Like, giving up 22 points to the Vikings tells you everything you need to know. Like, this is the Vikings are a team that is averaging over 21 points per game. So they held them under their average this season. They did it without getting a shit ton of pressure, which means they did it through coverage and defensive players going out there and making plays, which is always really impressive, especially considering you have a night where the offense literally can't do anything right. They lost 3 of their offensive possessions to turnovers, which is always the worst way. And they were early on in the possessions too. It wasn't like they got 9 plays in and then all of a sudden an interception got thrown. It was like 3 or 4 plays in, the ball's turned over, the defense is back on the field, and they can't do anything with it. Things to take away from this: it was really weird to see the Minnesota Vikings, because we talked about this last week. The Vikings run game has been slowly kind of building a little bit more as the season has gone on, and on Monday Night Football, it actually turned up. It turned up, and that was the missing piece that they needed to be able to take some pressure off Kirk Cousins. Not to say that he wasn't under pressure throughout the course of this game, but him being able to depend on Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson taking some time away from I say taking some time away. He's on IR. A lot of people are speculating he's just not going to come back, or he won't come back as quickly as you would expect from somebody with a hamstring injury and all that kind of stuff, which if you are a football player or like a football coach, you don't want him to come back too soon, because that's what it really comes down to. Like, it's stupid that people are like, oh yeah, he's going to take his time coming back from a hamstring injury. You mean like he should, right? Like, he's hurt. He should not come back until he's 100%, because not to say that 80% Justin Jefferson is of no use to the Minnesota Vikings, but like, why get a guy at week 10 in an 18-week season, or week 11 in an 18-week season, and it'll be 80%, when you can wait 2 more weeks or a couple more games and then get the guy and get the full 100% type of guy. Because if your entire team comes down to the fact that your number 1 wide receiver is no longer playing in the game and your team just can't survive that, that's a poorly constructed team that should lose games. Luckily, Minnesota Vikings not looking like a poorly constructed team. Now, I wonder, very similar to what we've seen with the Arizona Cardinals, how long will it last? How long can we expect Jordan Hicks to play like a superstar defensive lineman? How long can we expect Wanham and Danielle Hunter, who, by the way, like, and this is messed up for me to say, but Danielle Hunter, like, I guess I don't know if it's like fully out on him or anything like that, but I listened to PFF, and before the season started, they pointed out something that I didn't know about Danielle. He just basically doesn't defend the run, and it shows up like a lot. Luckily for them, the way that they're running their defense, they have 5 people rushing almost every single play or every other play, so Danielle can afford to be a guy who only focuses on rushing the passer, and it shows in every aspect of what he does. You got to go out, you got to do what you got to do. Sacks get you paid. There's facts. That's why D tackles make a lot of run stopping tackles, and they don't treat them like they superstar edge rushers or anything like that. That's the funny part, bro. That's the one thing where it's just like Danielle Hunter he just completely bails on like setting the edge on a regular basis, because he believes that like getting to the quarterback is how he gets paid. It's true. Look at it. Look at his bank account. Harrison Phillips, who is a real football player for the Minnesota Vikings, plays D tackle. After this game was over with, tried to allegedly tried to jersey swap with your boy CMC, and because they're like ex-college teammates or whatever. And a prime example of people who have played football and have not played football came to fruition, where it's like, hey bro, like, I don't know if you know this or not, like, you can be on the same team with a dude and like don't even know his name. Like, straight up. Like, y'all both can be offensive and defensive starters, and you won't know each other's names because most of the time you're not around each other. Like, football teams are so big, especially at the college and the high school level. Football teams are so big that there's no two-way players anymore. So there's no bridge between the offense and the defense. There's times where you go up against guys when you're in scrimmages and stuff like that, but to like try and pretend that every defensive player knows every offensive player and every offensive player knows every defensive player and special teams guy, that's bullshit. Like, there's no that's not a thing. Like, that's why people ask, like, who's the guy in the locker room that can connect with everybody, because there's guys who can connect with just the defense, there's guys who can connect with just the offense. That's why it's important to have like veterans who come with like such a big gravitas in football. Like, you talk about Calais Campbell, like, he apparently with the Falcons has been able to find a way to connect, mainly because that actually doesn't surprise me at all, because if you know anything about Calais Campbell, he seems like a kind of guy that you actually want to be cool with, like, as a person, and it shows. But yeah, no, like, he apparently gave him the old stiff arm when it came down to it, when it came down to Harrison Phillips and everything like that, being like, hey man, like, I really don't want to share. Let me check my audio. All right, cool. I'm just making sure. That he doesn't want to share. He doesn't want to jersey swap with him. And I was like, yeah, I kind of see why he wouldn't want a D tackles 6XL jersey, and that's not to call Harrison Phillips fat, because frankly, like, when Nike took over for the uniform stuff for the NFL, there's a lot of players that were complaining about see-through pants. Like, legitimately, they were like, I'm sweating and people now can see my ass cheeks kind of deal. Everything that Nike makes is too tight because they're trying to go for a certain body type, and they did not adjust it to NFL football players. So that was pretty funny. That it's not funny that he shrugged off a D lineman, but it's still definitely one of those things where, like, it comes off like you're mad because you just lost, right? You're mad because you just lost 22-17 type of deal. Or he was just like, yeah, man, I'll send you one in the mail, because that happens a lot more frequently than people think. Fred Warner has like a room filled with all the great linebackers in the NFL that he plays currently with. Like, he has Bobby Wagner's jersey hanging up in a room in his house. And you can see that on, man, where did I see that? Maybe it was on Overtime. Overtime does like things where they go to people's, they do cribs but with athletes. Anyway, Thursday Night Football happened. The Jaguars played the Saints. This one was highly chaotic. Remember, we're talking about the New Orleans Saints defense, lockdown defense. This is, I think, the first time this is the most points they've surrendered all season, if I'm not mistaken. And that's like the big takeaway from all this. Like, the Jaguars were able to overcome one of the best defenses in the NFL, and try and deny that that's not what happened is a little bit absurd, right? Saw Derek Carr get off to a rough start and then find his way as the game. He started to heat up as the game kind of wore on and looked like a better version of an offense they really want, right? Like, this is the 31 points is the most points that anybody scored on them, other than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a divisional opponent that scored 26 on them, right? Everybody else has scored under 20. They had that streak of like 19 games or some crazy number of like games where the opponent hasn't scored 21 points on them or something. Anyway, that came to an end. Most points in this one. They gave up over 500 yards. They gave up 300 yards in total. Most of it, very impressively, with the rushing game. Travis Etienne is becoming one of the better running backs in the NFL, and that's considering how his career started with, a season-ending injury to start his career off with, and now he's come back and he's playing exactly like he did when he was in college. Cam Robinson coming back has been a huge boost in terms of the pass protection, which has obviously opened up a lot of stuff for them in throwing the ball down the field. The stuff with the Saints, Michael Thomas has been slowly working his way towards like having a big game overall. I'm gonna be honest about that. Like, it's really easy for me to sit here and be like, oh, Michael Thomas disappeared, nobody knows where he is. But when we're being honest about the situation, you got to do it in context for what Derek Carr is capable of doing right now. He had 301 passing yards, which is a season high so far, and they only turned the ball over one time, and they kept this game close vast majority of it because they were able to in the first half of the game, things were a little chaotic in terms of like who was going to be able to control this game overall. And I don't know if this is like an intentional type of thing, but it doesn't feel like Trevor Lawrence is being asked to go out there and just light the world on fire when he's trying to throw the ball down the field. A lot of their stuff is mid to they're one of the teams, and there's been a lot of articles in particular one from Brooke Pryor of ESPN, who's been on this show before multiple times. Shout out to Brooke. She's been out here living her dream. I saw her schedule. She posted like on her Instagram story about all the stuff she has to do this week, and it sounds like an absolute nightmare as a person who barely wants to do one thing a day. Anyway, she wrote an article about how teams are passing. Like, teams are not passing as far down the field as they used to, which is true. Like, you can just see it objectively with your eyes. There are so many more teams that are concerned about getting quarterbacks that can't necessarily make the best read, make the perfect read all the time, that can't necessarily thread it through multiple defenders and everything like that. Like, we live in a post-Drew Brees, post-Tom Brady, post-Peyton Manning, post-Phillip Rivers era, and we're waiting to see some more guys emerge. Also, combine that with the fact that there's a dramatic rise in zone man coverage and just zone coverage in general, because it is able to mitigate the requirement for DBs to be able to keep up with wide receivers who are just flat out more athletic than them, and it turns defense into a team effort, right? And as opposed to a singular isolation ball, which is something that behooves a lot of players. Like Mike Evans is like the perfect example of, hey man, like if we can avoid having true isolation with Mike Evans, why wouldn't we, right? Why wouldn't we have somebody defend Mike at the 5-yard line, when he gets to 5 yards to 10 yards to 15 yards, and then when he gets beyond that, have multiple people running behind him, so that the only way to throw the ball to Mike Evans is to have a perfect throw. When I watched the Jaguars, they seem to be more centered around throwing the ball further and further down the field. And I think that's where they kind of run into some trouble. They have a run game that they can depend on, which is, believe it or not something that necessarily every player in every team in the NFL can say that they can depend on. Also, I'd like to point out we are cruising towards check down Carr, right? Derek Carr threw. All right, man. Let's just do it. I'll talk about it. Derek Carr he had 55 pass attempts. And out of those 55, he completed 33. 12 of them went to one person. That person is Alvin Kamara. Yeah, the Alvin Kamara quickly has taken over as the number one wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints, and it is hard to believe that it's hard to believe that Derek Carr's arm is still not hurt. And we could talk about that Packers game, right? He plays in that game. He throws like a bit. They say he threw 8 passes to Alvin Kamara, and it felt like he threw 57 because there were so many plays where they were just like the default passes to throw it to Alvin Kamara. There's no second read. There's no third read. The top 2 receivers in this game were Chris Olave, who is in some legal trouble right now, and then Alvin Kamara. They combined for, what is the number? 12 plus 7 is 19 out of 33 completions. So almost half. Right? Almost half the completions went to 2 guys. That tells you everything that you need to know about the situation. Michael Thomas in this situation only had 3 catches, but they were for 42 yards. Like they were kind of pushing the ball further down the field. There's a lot of playmaking that this offense is centered around. There's a lot of like get the ball out as soon as possible, try and take advantage of the fact that the defenders are dropping into their zones, and see if they can crash down hard enough to be able to make tackles on Alvin Kamara in open space. Which, hey, guess what? That's hard as shit. That's hard as hell. There's no way around that. That is very difficult to do. They're asking you to like, hey man, like let's play this game. Can you tackle Alvin Kamara, or can you get more than one person to rally to the ball in enough time before Alvin Kamara gains 10 yards? That's a game I think a lot of people will be willing to play. Chris Olave is obviously does a really good job of identifying gaps in zones, and that's what helps him a bunch. But this may be one of the best overall games the Saints have played all season, and they lost it. Tells you a lot. But yeah, Jaguars did their thing. So moving on to Sunday, the Raiders and the Bears played football against each other. Bad news for everybody involved with it that had to watch it. I will say this, another huge game from the Bears. This time, they were able to do it with their backup quarterback, which gives us a glimpse into not necessarily post-Justin Fields world, but the fact that their head coach, Matt Eberflus, new guy on the block, maybe, just maybe, his coaching staff figuring it out, bro. They scored a touchdown in every single quarter, which, by the way, if you have a team that can score points in every single quarter, whether it be 3 or 7, you can win so many games in the NFL. If you have a team that can score a touchdown a quarter, you can win like 90% of the games you play in the NFL. And that's something that's so underrated. And I mean, I feel like a lot of people underrate that aspect of it. So the way this one shook out, and this is why we're not going to talk about this game, the Raiders scored their second field goal in the fourth quarter at 12:20 to make the game 21-6, and then they did not score again until there was a minute 10 left on the clock, and it was a touchdown. By the way, Jacoby Myers completely blowing out every single record. He's on the verge of having a career year, and it's ridiculous, right? 30-12 is the final score in this one. The Raiders basically just didn't play football this entire game, and it was kind of tough because the Raiders defense has actually looked good throughout the course of the season, and this is another one of those games where the offense just didn't help them out at all, and it was kind of tough. It was pretty bad to look at. We had the situation where, like, they had Brian Hoyer out there. Brian Hoyer, there's a reason that Brian's been a career backup for a multitude of reasons. He had 2 turnovers in this, and if you want to know one thing about the Raiders this season, they're a team that cannot afford to turn the ball over at all, let alone the ways that they were being turned over in this game. So there was 3 total interceptions in this one, and they were all on the Raiders. Against the Raiders. They were all interceptions of Raiders quarterbacks because later Aiden O'Connell gets put into an unwinnable situation and then expected to go out there and do things. I think we've gotten to the point, one, let's be real. We know what the whole starting Brian Hoyer thing is for the Raiders. It is Josh McDaniels trying to save his job, a la very much Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien, when he was in his last days with the Houston Texans. I don't know why you would fire a guy so quickly, and I'm going to tell you this right now. Don't think they're going to fire Josh McDaniels, mainly because a lot of us understand the financial situation the Raiders are currently in. Mark Davis, although, might have some big money coming in because those ladies for the Aces have won back-to-back titles. And, of course, your boy ordered a championship shirt. Back-to-back, baby. Pocket Aces season. Up next, 3 of a kind. You know what I mean? Anyway, Raiders, Bears. The Raiders and the Bears. The Bears are the only team that showed up. Bears defense looking stout. I will say this, they went up against an offense that has looked terrible all season. So they went out there and they did their job. You know what I mean? The first 4 games of the season, they looked horrible. In the last 3, they've looked pretty good. There's still the jury's still out on Justin Fields. I'm not here to diss Justin. I want Justin to succeed. I just don't want so I have come to the conclusion that C.J. Stroud is the greatest quarterback in the history of Ohio State because he looks like he's the only Ohio State quarterback that's going to pan out in the history of Ohio State quarterbacks getting drafted into the NFL. So maybe Justin can be the second greatest, and that'll be enough for him to pan out in the NFL. A lot of people asking why the Falcons have not called up the Bears and asked about old Justin Fields, and that's an interesting conversation to be had. Speaking of conversations to be had, let's talk about the Browns and the Colts. Easily one of the most chaotic games we've seen all season. Game of the year candidate because it had everything. It had a beautiful offensive touchdowns, absolutely horrible interceptions, great sacks. There was a blocked field goal. There was a defensive touchdown in this game as well. Myles Garrett put on one of the greatest defensive performances of all time. And we'll talk about that a little bit later because I need to have a conversation. I need to talk real quick. All right. So you guys know it's bad when I pick up the microphone, but I need to say it. So, Deshaun Watson started this game. I'm moving it further away because I'm about to yell. Deshaun Watson started this game. And this is for all the cowards out there. Yeah, that's right. That's right. All the cowards out there on the internet who won't say it. I'll say it. Maybe Deshaun was the problem in Houston. Maybe, just maybe, Deshaun Watson is just a more athletic Tony Romo. Think about that. He's dug the Browns into multiple holes, either through inefficiency as an offensive quarterback or turning the ball over, which, by the way, at first it was the offense couldn't move up and down the field. Now we're having problems with giving the ball to the opposing defense. Now, it was the Colts defense. I'll give them that. But at some point, we got to be honest with ourselves. Maybe the offensive line didn't suck. Maybe Deshaun was holding onto the ball for too long. Maybe, just maybe, Bill O'Brien wasn't the idiot that you all pretend that he is. Maybe we know who the real problem is. The diddler. Anyway, I just wanted to get that out there. I had to get that off my chest. I feel like there's a lot of cowards who won't say what's going on here. A lot of people who've broken their necks to try and stick up for Deshaun Watson despite all the evidence out there in the world, contrary to everything that he's talked about. So, but yeah, no, he gets hurt. I think the second drive of this game because he's rolling out to the left-hand side and he gets cracked by a defensive lineman for the Indianapolis Colts and throws an interception in the process. Does not come back. XFL uncrowned MVP, the second to most recent rendition of the XFL. So the second rendition of the NFL. Uncrowned MVP PJ Walker comes in for the Houston Roughnecks. Former Houston Roughnecks quarterback, by the way. Don't forget that. Actually got to see PJ play with my boy Michael Sager. Shout out to him. It was his birthday a couple days ago. Anyway, how do I describe this game? Other than utter chaos. You know what? I'll summarize it like this. The two best backup quarterbacks in the NFL, PJ Walker and Gardner Minshew, duked it out. While the two of the best defenses in the NFL cooked them alive. Let's be honest. There was like 6 turnovers in this game overall. I will say this. Most importantly, while those quarterbacks were making some pretty impressive plays, the most impressive thing on the field was Myles Garrett playing football throughout the course of this game. So looking at it statistically, there were 6 turnovers in general. The team that had the most turnovers lost this game by 1 point. Math, it ain't mathin', but that's how math works. That's how football math works sometimes, folks. You can turn the ball over twice as much as your opponent and still come out on top. I think that says something about the Colts and the Browns. Playoffs. I'm kidding. But most importantly, let's just talk about the absolutely stupid stuff that Myles Garrett did throughout the course of this game. So when Deshaun, I think this is when Deshaun was still in, or maybe it was when PJ was still in. PJ Walker, shorter quarterback, which has not stopped other people from being able to succeed, a.k.a. Tua Tagovailoa, and for whatever you have to say about Kyler Murray has played well for a quarterback in the NFL. Like at one point, MVP candidate. Let's not lie to ourselves. He had a pass. Myles Garrett deflected a pass so high up into the air that it was essentially a punt for one of the D linemen on the Browns to catch, and it hit him on the helmet, I think, and his teammates couldn't catch it because they couldn't see it. I'm assuming he lost it in the stadium lights as well, even though this game was during the daytime. He had 7 solo tackles. That's important to know. He had 1 tackle for loss. He had 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and he blocked a field goal. Has a defensive player ever controlled an offense more dominantly than what we saw out of Myles Garrett this past Sunday? I don't think so, ladies and gentlemen. That's easy. We're in a season where Khalil Mack had 5, or was it 6? I think Khalil Mack had 6 sacks against Aiden O'Connell, and I felt like Myles Garrett was everything was under Myles Garrett's control throughout the course of this game. And it says a lot because his team did win. His team did end up winning. PJ Walker had 2 absolutely horrible passes down the field. They were deeper passes downfield. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, the Colts really good at playing defense. They had a DB near the wide receiver he was aiming for, and then another defensive back. I want to say it was Kenny Moore. came over from like the middle of the field and just intercepted it. It was a duck. It was essentially a duck to a really very, very good defense. And so was the second interception as well. That was kind of tough. They were deeper into Colts territory. So with the starting position off those interceptions were not great, and that's probably what set it up for being successful. Whereas the Colts were able to have turnovers like literally, I think they had one at like the 2-yard line where they tried to QB sneak it and they tried to hand the ball off and it got fumbled, and the Browns were already in the backfield by the time that they tried to recover it, and they scooped it up and scored. They didn't score off of it, but they turned the ball over inside of their own red zone, or inside the Browns red zone, and basically took prevented a touchdown from being able to go on the board, right? Those are game-changing type turnovers, right? That was the tough part about a good chunk of the turnovers for the Colts. Most of theirs were after they had gotten into Browns territory, and then they basically took points off the board, because you can argue, like, for whatever you have to say about them not getting the touchdown, they were in field goal range. Like, I think on 3 out of these 4 turnovers, they were in field goal range, because one of them was like Gardner Minshew dropping back in the pocket. Somebody ran all the way around the world, and they were able to get they forced Gardner to step up in the pocket, and then Myles Garrett jump switched inside on the tackle, so the tackle's backing up, right to the left tackle's backing up, and the D lineman goes to his inside hip, and Gardner Minshew's just standing there, and he pops the ball out. Gardner tries to kick the ball towards one of his offensive linemen, and it does not work, and they turn it over, I think, inside Colts territory. Bad time, bad news, bad time, right? Always bad when you get the offense that is with their backup quarterback, a really nice, healthy field to start with. The decisive quarter in this game was the second for the Browns. They had 20 points on the board in the second quarter. So, if there's one game you go back and rewatch, it's this one. This is the one that you go back and rewatch multiple times over. It's going to be on NFL Network. I'm 100% sure of that. Moving on to the next game, the Bills took on the Patriots. Look. This is one of those games where, I picked the Bills because I have faith in the fact that I believe that the Bills are still more talented than the Patriots, despite all of the injuries. But what I do know, and I wouldn't say I forget, but I do know Bill O'Brien is very good at his job. He's also very good at opponents that he plays multiple times over. I believe Josh Allen is a guy he's played a few times. So it showed in this one, right? A lot of the problems in this game stem from Josh Allen trying to make plays out of nothing, which is a return to, I wouldn't say tight end Josh Allen, but it feels eerily reminiscent of tight end Josh Allen in his first couple of years, where he just refused to give up on plays, and he kept trying to make them happen because he was just like, I have to put the squad on my back, and the squad is like, nah, bro, like we can not succeed on this down, I promise you. Anyway, this game is interesting because it is yet another chapter in the whole, like, Bill O'Brien, very weird how good he is at football, how good he is at coaching football sometimes, and not good at it since Tom Brady retired. So 29-25 is the final score in this one. The Patriots win. Bill O'Brien gets his 300th win, making him one of something that we already knew, that he was one of the greatest coaches, if not the greatest coach in the history of the NFL, and proving that all you need is a hoodie, a lack of social skills, and dedication to watching the film, bros. Dedication to the game, and you too can be great. So that's the weird part that goes throughout the course of this one. So we can talk about where it gets really weird. The Patriots scored a season high in points. Mac Jones was out there dealing. A lot of it was centered around a run game that didn't have 100 yards this season, in this game. So I think it was 87 overall between Ezekiel Elliott and Ramondre Stevenson. Both of them combined together had 87 yards or something, which is super weird because Ramondre Stevenson's really good. Ezekiel Elliott pretty good. Zeke was out there running like he was Michael Turner. Ultimate power back out there. Got his first touchdown as a Patriot, and I mean, it was so weird watching a Bills defense that is really good not perform very well. The D-line has been one of the few areas where they haven't had a heavy amount of injuries. This is the first game without Matt Milano, and the run defense was there. It just wasn't there enough. Like we said before, they kept them under 100 yards rushing throughout the course of this game. That's usually an indicator of, like, you did your job. D-line and linebackers, you did your job. And still wasn't enough because they were able to keep this game close. So many, on top of that, the run game was just enough for the balanced offense approach that the Patriots had, because they had 30 pass attempts to 24 rush attempts. That's pretty even, especially in the NFL. I just told you that fucking Derek Carr threw the ball 55 times. Like, they've all but given up on being able to run the ball in the most conventional way possible, and the Patriots are still out here trying to go 50-50. That says a lot, right? Like, that's intentional. That's to test people. A lot of people forget how exhausting it is to defend the run, and I say forgetting because that's me being generous, because it would imply that some people know the effort that it takes to go out there and defend the run, and some people don't. So the score at the beginning of the fourth quarter of this game is 16-10. The Patriots are cooking on offense and on defense. The defense had a great concept. They had deep zone drops, and they were basically like, hey man, you can take the underneath stuff, knowing that the guy that they were playing against is always looking to try and drop the bomb, because he's got he's got like a nuclear weapon he's got a nuke as an arm, so they know he's always trying to throw the ball deep down the field. And their whole concept was like, yeah man, like, we're just not gonna let that happen. You can have the underneath stuff, and they depended upon their defense to go out there and be able to rally. And there was a lot of great solo tackling from the defenders for the Patriots, because it felt like they were finally back to looking like the Patriots defense we saw the first 4 games of the season, right? And it worked out, man. Like, there were so many situations where they would throw the ball to a wide receiver the only wide receiver who ran a short route. Everybody else is running something that was 15 yards and beyond. And they had one wide receiver who was running a short route, and that guy was just getting mauled by like 2 or 3 people every single time he touched the ball, because there were people waiting for him to throw basically the check down, and he just wouldn't do it, right? That seemed like it was forcing Josh Allen, like, hey man, if you want to throw the ball down the field, you got to be super accurate, right? If you want to throw the ball down the field, you can't throw it too far in front because there's a safety coming over the top. You can't throw it behind because there's a DB in trail position the entire time. Plus, if you try and throw it over the middle, there's people sitting in zone while guys have been picked up in zone man concepts. That was next level type shit. That was the Patriots next level stuff. I'm sure there's gonna be tons of people who try and copy exactly what they did because they think their personnel is better, but we'll see. Anyway, so this game stays like stupid close. Like I said, in the fourth quarter, it's 16-10, and then at the 5:41 mark, 5:41 left on the clock in the fourth quarter, it's 22-10 because the Patriots score again. Josh Allen throws a ball to Stephon Diggs. He bounced off his defender to stay up after catching a throw that Josh Allen made while he was being taken down to the ground. This is like 15 yards down the field. So he's like mid-sack and rips it down the field 15 yards. Stephon Diggs catches it to the inside of his defender that had an inside position originally. He bounces off the tackle and then runs into the end zone. They make the score 22-17. Getting a little close, right? 4 plays later, there's 5 minutes and 2 seconds left on the clock. Kendrick Bourne gets a pass from Mac Jones. He fumbles because Jordan Poyer punched it out, which is why Jordan Poyer is so important when he's not in the game, right? He punches the ball out. The Bills get the ball back. 8 plays later, we get one Josh Allen yeeting the ball into the end zone that almost gets picked off by a linebacker from the Patriots. We get 3 plays where Josh Allen is very nearly sacked and he has to throw the ball away. That includes 1 play where he actually, this is when they're like on the 15-yard line. That includes 1 play where he completes a pass 3 yards down the field to Latavius Murray, who's running an out route, and gets them down to like the 1-yard line. And then it also includes the QB sneak that gets them the touchdown and then a 2-point conversion. Yeah. Absolute chaos. So they score 16 points in like less than 40 seconds in game time. It's a combined, let me get the exact number. It's like 3 minutes and 12 seconds. They score 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion. No big deal. And I say no big deal because then Mac Jones, after losing the lead 25-22 is now the score. Mac Jones is like, oh, yeah, game-winning drive. Kind of weird. Don't know how he got here. Mac Jones staring down a team that was one game away from the AFC Championship game last year and leading a game-winning drive for Bill Belichick's 300th win as a head coach. Not saying that this is the Patriots turning the corner because you can't believe anything you see in a divisional matchup. Almost none of that stuff carries over, but this is the kind of win. Just like we had the heartbreakers category where there are games that break the will and the heart of a team. This is the kind of game that you learn some stuff about the players who are on your team, right? And then on top of that, you also learn to believe in each other a little bit more, right? Like you gain a little bit of faith. Speaking of gaining faith, the Giants played the Commanders. Tyrod Taylor takes over for Daniel Jones, and if it wasn't for the fact that Daniel Jones had already gotten paid, like the greatest hustle of all time was in full effect as of right now, he probably wouldn't be getting the job back. But when Daniel Jones comes back, he's going to get the job back. Now it's going to be even worse, right? Like there are some people, I will say this, black people don't have to be reminded that Tyrod Taylor's really good at football. Like, I think people of color in general don't have to be reminded that Tyrod Taylor is good at football. Other people have to be reminded of how poorly Tyrod Taylor's career has been treated. Like, remember, he was a starting quarterback for the Chargers before Justin Herbert took over, and he had his lung punctured by, or was it a rib broken or his lung punctured? Literally, like, hours before his first start, right? 14-7. Rare example of like suing a team that you work for to get money and then subsequently continuing to work for them. So Giants play. Tyrod Taylor goes out there and does his thing. They looked a lot when they played on Monday Night Football. They looked better with Tyrod Taylor in there because Tyrod's a veteran quarterback. This is the same dynamic we talked about when you can't have Ryan Fitzpatrick as a backup quarterback for your young quarterback. When you're talking about like Trevor Lawrence or like one of these other guys that's out here, like you can't have Ryan Fitzpatrick back there because everybody knows that he's good. And technically everybody knows in this moment, if you were to start Ryan Fitzpatrick, you're going to get better results out of Ryan Fitzpatrick than you are out of the rookie quarterback, even if it's a first round, even if the quarterback is a first round pick, right? Because Ryan's been around for so long, he's seen every defense you can possibly throw at him. He knows how to make plays. Same thing with Tyrod. Like Tyrod's been around for a really long time. He's seen multiple ways to play football. He knows how to be successful. He's familiar with Brian Daboll's system because he was with the Bills for a little chunk there when the whole Josh Allen thing was going down. When Josh Allen was on the rise, and now he's back with Brian Daboll, and for whatever Brian has to say about, Tyrod checking out of plays that he didn't want him to check out of, I think he has way more faith than Daniel Jones to make plays. Also, really bad to see that Tyrod Taylor is able to take the group of wide receivers who most of you cannot name, right? Like, most of you don't know who Isaiah Hodgins is. A lot of you know who Jalen Hyatt is. And that says a lot. Like, a lot of you know who Darren Waller is. This game, the Giants coming off of a game that came down to the last play, right, where they felt like Darren Waller had a PI call, which would have given them another 4 opportunities to score a touchdown on the 1-yard line. And you'd like to imagine they would have come up with it, but I've also seen how the Giants play, how the Giants offensive line plays. Wouldn't guarantee it. Other stuff that comes with this: the Giants 14, like I said, the Commanders 7 in this one. I feel like we go on this roller coaster all the time. Especially with Jack Del Rio led defenses, they start the season not looking great, and then by the time, because there's so much, there's so many individual reads that have to be made when you're in Jack Del Rio's defenses. It takes time for people to be successful within them, and that I remember this like 2 years ago, right, when they literally went from like third to last in terms of like defensive efficiency and yards per play to first, and it took like 4 or 5 games into the season for the group of DBs they had to adjust to it. They've already benched Emmanuel Forbes, who's like their first round pick, mainly because Emmanuel Forbes has been absolutely fucked in terms of the players that he has to defend on a regular basis. That A.J. Brown game was crazy because A.J. Brown is the worst, like statistically he's the worst kind of guy to go up against because you can lock him down. Like if there are 40 pass plays, you can lock him down 32 of those 40. Those other 8 are for like 40 yards apiece. Like that's the kind of, he's currently third in receiving. Like, people are talking about Tyreek Hill possibly being on pace to overcome Megatron's like 1,900 yard receiving yard season. There are two players who are like right behind him. It's Puka Nacua and AJ Brown. They are, all three of those guys are getting there in different ways. Tyreek Hill, elite level, world-class speed. Puka Nacua, killing zones. Killing zones left and right, finding the gaps in zones. He's got Matthew Stafford's faith. Combine that with AJ Brown, who's just like a home run hitter. Like, there's so many examples of like AJ Brown doesn't, like, most of his stuff is not short yardage, right? And a lot of it is deep down the field because he has a size advantage, especially the further he gets away from the line of scrimmage, the fewer people who are able to actually bring him down to the ground exist further away from the field. We saw an example of that on Sunday Night Football. The Commanders took on the Giants in this one. Like I said before, I think that was me talking about how Emmanuel Forbes has gotten the short end of the stick as a rookie, going up against like literally the best wide receivers in the NFL pretty much every single week. But a touchdown on the board, not great. Not great at all. So the Commanders take another L and kind of slip further, like, off the hype train. Like, a lot of people really behind Sam Howell. I think Sam Howell can potentially be pretty good too. But you go up against the Giants defense that has actually played better than the offense, which I think everybody just laughed when I said that. It's kind of not hard to play better than the Giants offense, but it's an important aspect to recognize. While the offensive line has basically been a bunch of swinging door offensive linemen the entire season, they have had a defense that's given them a chance in a lot of these games. So the Falcons took on the Buccaneers. This game was, how do I describe it? Painful. Right, I think that's right. So the Falcons, once again, coming into this game, we talked about how good the Falcons defense has been all season. They're one of the worst defenses in terms of turning their pressure into sacks. They're last in the league in sacks overall, and that only leads me to believe that the Falcons are like the best coverage team in the NFL. Like, in terms of staying near and breaking up passes, AJ Terrell's looked really good, and plus Jesse Bates. Man, I'm trying to think of the other corner that they have on the other side of the field. Anyway, they've done a fantastic job all season, and this was just another example of that. They held the Buccaneers at 13 points, all field goals, if I'm not mistaken. Off the top of my head, sorry, I'll look it up right now. So we're all on the same page. It was painful for me to watch the replay of it. I'm sure it was not fun for Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans to watch in real time. So they got a touchdown in the first quarter, and then everything else after that was field goals. They got 2 field goals after that. So the Falcons defense did their job. The offense, oh man. So we saw Desmond Ridder get a little mobile on us. He had a rushing touchdown, and he had the ever rare, super annoying touchback rule called against him. It was super annoying. The dumbest rule in football, where like if you fumble the ball out of bounds on the 1 yard line, it's a touchback at the 20 yard line for the defense, instead of just like the ball is spotted where it went out of bounds, just like it is 99% of the time. Being like, the ball is at the 1 yard line. It could easily just be that, and nobody will ever change that rule for some reason. And this is coming from a guy who tries to do everything in his power to support defensive players. I just think that's a dumb rule. It doesn't make any sense. Kyle Pitts made cool shit that happened in this game, because I'm not going to sit here and talk about all the boring stuff that happened, because it was like 90% of the game was boring. Kyle Pitts made a behind-the-back catch while 2 defenders were converging on him to stop him from catching. It was kind of wild. Not kind of wild. It was really wild. It was my hands are gigantic, so this ball is like a Nerf football in my hands, so I'm not really concerned about my ability to catch it. Oh, by the way, Kyle Pitts, he's alive, guys. To everybody in fantasy who has Kyle Pitts and is super pissed because checks notes, the same thing that happened last year is happening again this year. He's alive, everyone. Kyle Pitts out there on the field doing things. He got the ball a couple of times, made a couple of big plays. And I say that because I went back and I counted. There were 87 pass attempts, and this will probably be the last. Oh no, I got 2 more things. This is the sad stat game where I just read off sad things that I tabulated. So I got 2 things. This is second to last here. There were 87 pass attempts in this game. out of those 87, between both quarterbacks, by the way, Baker Mayfield threw 55 passes in this game. Don't know if that's a recipe for success, but we'll talk about why he threw 55 passes in this game. 87 pass attempts between the two quarterbacks, almost 100. Crazy to think about that. 11 of those 87 went for 10 yards or more. Everything else, that's right. What is that? 76 passes that went for less than 10 yards. And I didn't see a lot of nines in there, boys. I did not see a lot of nines in there. I'll tell you that much. That is wild. So, yeah. Going back to the whole Baker Mayfield threw 55 passes in a football game for some reason, and there's no legit explanation why. The Buccaneers cannot run the ball. I think they're the worst rush offense in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the stats right in front of me or anything like that. I'll pull it up right now. I'm pretty sure they're the worst rush offense in the NFL right now. And that's a problem. They're averaging, I want to say 3 yards a carry. Bad news Bears. Bad news on that one. Bad news for the Buccaneers. They have 2 games where they've rushed for over 100 yards, and the other 6 games they've rushed for under 75. Yeah, great, right? I'm sure that's an effective way to win. The second leading rusher for the Buccaneers is Baker Mayfield with 99 rushing yards, which is probably a career high for him. So, hopefully he's got that contract incentive centered around his rushing yards in his deal. Every other person who has carried the ball in a running sense has under 40 yards. Under 40. That includes the other running backs on the team that are not Rashid White, who has 300 rushing yards or something like that. Bad times for everybody when you're on a team that has Baker Mayfield as its quarterback and you have an aspect of your offense that just does not exist, which is essentially what the Buccaneers run game is right now. I will also point out a really cool thing that happened in this game. Mike Evans, sick 47-yard touchdown catch. Really cool. It was just Mike Evans running fast, which is always cool to see. The Lions played Let me phrase it correctly. The Ravens played the Lions. This final score is 38-6. The Ravens finally got the offense that they've been talking about to click. We've seen aspects of it work from week 1 when they played the Texans to, when they played against the Browns. There's a lot of people keep bringing that game up, but they don't want to talk about what really happened. I want to say 100% of the points the Ravens scored were after the Browns after they turned over the Browns on defense. So there were some aspects of it that were working, and then it gets to an absolute low the week before, where they have 7 drops in a single game. Rashad Bateman can't make a catch. Mark Andrews drops a touchdown. Zay Jones is dropping the ball out there, right? It gets to an absolute low last week, and now it's at an all-time high. Season high in points for the Ravens, 38 points. Lamar Jackson is back, 4 touchdowns in this game. I think he had 4. Hold on. There's a record he set. I think it's the 5th time he's had this kind of game as an NFL quarterback, and every other quarterback that's ever existed in the NFL has only done it 4 times. And yeah, it was something stupid. Lamar Jackson just did something that only Lamar Jackson can do reasonably throughout the course of a career, and it showed. 21 for 27, almost 400 yards. He had 3 touchdowns overall. It was 3 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. That just doesn't happen, basically. Anyway, Ravens were cooking. Lions couldn't stop them. Big questions on the Lions defense up front. This is something that we've been seeing the last couple of weeks. The Lions really have struggled to actually generate sack pressure. It was even more difficult against the most mobile quarterback in the NFL. So what do you know? When you can't generate pressure, it comes down to the DBs to go out there and cover the ball. And they can only do that for so long. And Lamar Jackson is more than good enough to be able to make that happen. On the flip side of it, Jared Goff, sitting duck. If you don't know, leading into this season, Jared Goff had a player prop that was 0.5 rushing touchdowns for the season. It was a player prop. And one of my boys, Richie, he actually took it and got it 2 or 3 weeks ago. Jared Goff had a rushing touchdown on a QB, not a QB sneak. It was a QB fake out. It was a halfback dive fake to a QB run, and he was able to get a touchdown and it cashed or whatever. But the projection was 0.5 for a reason. Jared Goff, not very mobile, and they teed off on him. They had he had 5 sacks throughout the course of this game. They have 53 pass attempts, and he only got 284 yards out of it, right? That's always tough to see. Dude, the run game, like, non-existent. They led. The number 1 rusher in this game was Jahmyr Gibbs, but the 3 people after him were all Baltimore Ravens, right? So, one, obviously Lamar Jackson, but immediately after Jahmyr Gibbs, there was Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, who are quickly becoming one of the best tandems in the NFL. Like, they be banging it up in there, man. They really do their thing overall. I like that. Huge game for Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you didn't see it, 13 catches when it was all said and done. And it was crazy. Gus Edwards also had that crazy reception for 80 yards. That was pretty cool. That goes under the cool shit category. Jahmyr Gibbs, this is prime example of like the pressure is piling up too quickly. Your number 1 receiver was your running back, Jahmyr Gibbs. This is very similar, eerily reminiscent of the Saints, right? Sam Laporta, who, although, once again, another good game for rookie Sam Laporta. Look out. Probably going to end the season as a top 10 tight end in the NFL. Probably going to end it like top 5 when it's all said and done. Because he's been one of the few like consistent tight ends in terms of getting catches and getting yards. Not necessarily the touchdown stuff, but yeah, like the Lions, although they only scored 6 points in this game, they in action. But the Ravens, they look like, once again, this is the Ravens team that a lot of people speculated was going to finish last in the AFC North or whatever, and then some people predicted would finish first. As of right now, they look like the best AFC North team because looking at the Steelers, offense is almost non-existent. Half the game, or 90% of the games they've played, they looked decent this week, but it was due to something else. We'll talk about it. The Cleveland Browns, offense is in disarray. Absolutely. They just came off a week where they scored 39 points, and it's safe to say their offense is still in disarray. And who did I miss? And the Bengals. Like, the Bengals are starting to heat up a little bit. Defense is looking stout. Their offense is having a lot of consistency issues throughout the course of the season. They're obviously still waiting for Joe to get fully healthy, right? That's the tough part. Steelers Rams. Speaking of the Steelers, 24-17. I'd like to start off this breakdown by mentioning something that I feel like is a crime. George Pickens has the worst drip in the NFL, especially as a wide receiver. He has now famously worn multiple times over a short sleeve, loose fitting shirt, so like a regular shirt like this with sleeves on, and you can like see the gap. I think that's one of the most heinous crimes that a person of drip can commit. That's just me. If you're cold, wear a hoodie, my guy. You know what I mean? If you want to wear long sleeves, wear long sleeves. Don't try and get the points for wearing sleeves and then wear a loose fitting shirt underneath it. Anyway, today he did something that was even more heinous. So instead of wearing like leggings underneath his long socks for the Steelers socks or whatever, he wore turf tape on the inside portion of his knees. I'm not crazy, right? Like that. If you just wear leggings, bro. Just wear the leggings. Like for real. That's all. I'm not gonna. Oh man! Every time I see him, like the guy's clearly really good at his job. Really cool looking guy. That, like I said, worst on-field drip in the NFL. There's no question about it. Kenny Pickett, who also assaulted my eyes, he wore a yellow sleeve on his arm, and then he put the black QB wristband over the top of the yellow sleeve. So, negative 50 drip points for that. Congratulations. Like, if you're an NFL football player and you're telling me you can't get a QB wristband that's yellow that matches your sleeve, come on now. But yeah, this game starts with 0 points from both teams in the first quarter, and towards the end of the first quarter, the Rams get in field goal position. By the way, a lot of missed field goals this week. The Rams kicker kicks a field goal, misses it. and then the saddest headbutt I've ever seen in the history of football happens. The long snapper, and by the way, there's an important aspect to making sure that you keep the routine the same so that the kicker kind of like doesn't get in his head about being able to get a strike correctly. Everything needs to go exactly the same every single time, and then he like headbutts him. He walks up to him, and I can show it to you on the microphone right here. Kicker misses, his head's down, he's super sad, and then I want to say the long snapper comes up to him, and he's just like, and keeps walking. Doesn't even look at him. Sad. Very sad. Anyway, a little bit of redemption later on, but they still do lose this game. The Steelers' run game finally showed up. That was kind of cool. They didn't show up until the second half of the game, though. That was the tough part. So we got Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris, who, by the way, although they did show up later in the game, they both still got completely outclassed by Darrell Henderson Jr., who was on the Peace Squad to start this week, and a bunch of other dudes that were on the team as well. Royce Freeman was the second leading rusher in this game and for the Rams. They both outrushed Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris, who are, high-end draft picks kind of deal. Royce Freeman was a high-end pick, if I'm not mistaken, when he got selected by the Broncos. I'm sure everybody still hates Matt Canada, but facts are Kenny may not believe in them plays that he calling, but you know who he do believe? In the almighty hands of George Pickens. That is very clear. That's what was the difference maker in this game. When he needed something done, when there was reckoning to be reckoned, as they would say in Hamilton, George Pickens was his man. There was a couple of times he went to Deontay Johnson, which was cool to see Deontay getting into the mix a little bit, but it was George Pickens is taking over as the number one guy. This is another week of the Steelers defense buying enough time for the offense to get their shit together, and then the offense picking it up towards the end and be able to win the game. They actually were cooking the O-line of the Rams alive, which compounded the issues of the fact that the Steelers had really good just coverage down the field, passing coverage down the field. So they actually got Matthew Stafford with a little bit of happy feet action going on, which is saying a lot for a dude who's literally had his back broken on the field and kept playing. The rise of Puka Nacua was a big aspect of what kept the Rams in this game. But I think this is the second week in a row, because our second out of the last 3 weeks, right? The Rams played the Eagles last week. In the Rams game versus the Eagles, they showed up in the first half. In the second half, they were non-existent. And that's essentially what happened in this game. The rise of Puka Nacua continues. He's third in the league in receiving yards. That means, and maybe, just maybe, this would be kind of crazy, Puka is actually in the conversation for potentially breaking the all-time receiving single-season record, depending on how things shake out. Crazy for it. Like, he's already essentially having the greatest rookie wide receiver season ever, but for him to be able to do that would be some next level shit. Like, some next level type stuff. Things that you can, even if your career doesn't pan out with you becoming one of the greatest wide receivers of all time, that's something that you can talk about for the rest of your life, like, no matter what. Like, I'm the all-time leading receiver in the history of the NFL. Now, that's a long ways away, and it takes more and more absolutely stupid games. Absolutely stupid games like this. He had 157 receiving yards in this game. And Cooper Kupp is still on the field, by the way. And he's still figuring out how to get almost 200 yards a game. Crazy. The final drive by the Steelers, and this is... So this game is... the Steelers are down, and the Rams... I'm sorry. No. Yeah, the Steelers are down in this one, and they're trying to drive to win this game. Now, the next series of... There are 4... sketchy plays that essentially end up with the Rams not having a chance to win this game. The final drive by the Steelers, we're going to detail it here, and you tell me how stupid it is. So it comes down to 4 super sketchy plays. 3rd and 7 in the fourth quarter, Ahkello Witherspoon locks up Deontay Johnson on what looked to, based off the throw, was an option route, and it was either going to be a comeback or an out and up. Based off the combination of the throw from Kenny Pickett and the route that Deontay Johnson ran. Ahkello Witherspoon's in trail position, but he's not that far behind in terms of like where Deontay Johnson is in general. So he's doing that. He's running up the field. Deontay Johnson breaks down, comes to a complete stop. He realizes or well, he doesn't realize Ahkello Witherspoon has got him completely locked up in terms of whatever direction he decides to run. So when he breaks down and turns to run the comeback, Ahkello Witherspoon's in the spot. Like, he's ready. Like, if Kenny Pickett throws it to where Deontay Johnson wanted it, it's an interception. Instead, Kenny throws it up the field. Deontay runs through Ahkello Witherspoon to try and get back upfield, even though Ahkello Witherspoon already had claimed that space. He runs up the field, and the refs call pass interference. Even though the defensive player was looking at the ball the entire game, the entire route, had already established position, and the ball that Kenny Pickett threw was uncatchable. I love it when refs forget that the ball being catchable is a part of pass interference. We had an instance in the Browns Colts game where like they were like, oh, it doesn't matter if the ball's not catchable. You stopped it from me. Literally, the ball was thrown and it landed outside of the white out of bounds paint in the end zone, and one of the Browns drives that ended up with them getting to the 1 yard line. Luckily for the Colts, they're so good that they actually forced a turnover on that drive. That was the one where they forced the stop or whatever, and it actually forced a fumble and they recovered it. Anyway, back to Rams Steelers. They call pass interference on Ahkello Witherspoon. Everybody's looking at the replay. The announcers are trying to come, WWE style. The announcers are trying to come up with some excuse for why the referees called it that way, and it's just not happening for them. Like, they can't figure out a way around the fact that the refs are just wrong on that play. And then while the replay is running, 2 flags come out for taunting. They offset each other, and it makes it third down for the Steelers offense. Everyone is pissed. By the way, in SoFi Stadium, all Steelers fans. It was a home game. Anyway, 2 flags, like I said before. They wipe away the PI call. The result is a 3rd and 8. Kenny Pickett completes a pass to Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson, yeah, alive in the game, right? Knew he was the number 3 wide receiver for the Steelers, but forgot because I think he's got like 12 catches this season, 7 games into the season. Anyway, he catches the ball 1 yard short because the route he ran, I'm sure he was told to run that route by Matt Canada, short of the sticks. He does, and it becomes 4th and 1 because the Rams defense, for whatever you have to say about it, the DBs have stepped up, ladies and gentlemen. They run the route. Next play, Kenny Pickett and the Steelers try to run a QB sneak, and I don't know if you guys know this or not. The offensive line for the Steelers, not great. It shows itself in this one. They run regular QB sneak. Kenny falls down short of the line of scrimmage. There is clear video evidence of it, and he falls down behind the line of scrimmage from where he snapped the ball. Like, he's trying to lean behind. He tucks the ball, gets behind his guard. His guard is like churning his feet. He falls down because his guard is moving forward and he doesn't keep running his feet. So he just is like leaning on a person and the person is pulling away. He falls down to the ground. He's behind the line of scrimmage. He gets tackled, by the way, by the Rams up front. The Rams, although, because of this situation, the play happens at 2 minutes and 12 seconds of the 4th quarter. You're probably sitting at home, if you're not like a football fan or anything like that, you're like, oh, Ashton, why would that time frame matter? Because you can't review things without throwing a challenge flag unless you are under the 2-minute warning or at the 2-minute warning. So the Rams are out of timeouts, they're out of timeouts and they're out of challenges. They cannot challenge this play that is very clearly the refs with the wrong spot. They are replaying it in the stadium. They're replaying it on the broadcast, and it's like Kenny Pickett's knee is half a yard behind the line of scrimmage, and the ball ain't nowhere near a first down. The refs, continue to go with their spot because that's what they're supposed to do, right? Like, why would they change the spot of the ball after they've already spotted it or whatever? There's no way for the Rams to challenge it, so the Steelers keep it to the 2-minute warning, and then they kneel the game out because the Rams don't have a challenge to be able to... One, they can't stop the clock. They don't have a challenge to be able to challenge a very clearly, blatantly missed spotting of the ball that gives them the ball on that makes it that turns the ball over on fourth down because they were told that they got the first down. Tough way to go out. That is how they go out. Speaking of tough ways to go out, the Cardinals and the Seahawks. The Cardinals kind of unraveled a little bit here. Don't know when this happened. I've been watching the Cardinals games all season. There was so much QB run action throughout the course of this game. It was kind of wild, bro. The Cardinals offense is completely shifted to what you see like in an option read offense. Josh Dobbs is out here having to make reads on offensive linemen, which is probably not the greatest thing to do since he has shown himself to be really competent as as a quarterback overall. I will also point out, probably not the greatest thing to do because we got a chance to see Clayton Tune at one point during this game during a fake punt, and he just threw an interception. Like, they called a fake punt. Everybody was covered. Actually, he didn't throw an interception. He threw a pass 4 yards short on, 4th and 8. Even though he could have just switched back to punting the ball down the field. They ran a fake punt. The Seahawks were lined up with everybody perfectly. They tackled the receiver 3 yards short of the 4th down, and they just turn it over in their own territory. Anyway, that's what happens. Josh Dobbs is now a dual threat quarterback. They're treating him like he's Cam Newton. It's kind of wild to watch. To their credit, it really messed up the Seahawks to begin this game off with, but as time went on, their D linemen were kind of swarming a little bit. Most of this season, it's been a lot of Nwosu looking pretty good. This game in particular, Jaron Reed, one of the D tackles, stepped up and showed out in this one. But yeah, it was pretty wild. This game was only relatively close. It was a 10-point win. This game was close in the fourth quarter. It was only close because Geno Smith and the Seahawks offense as a whole turned the ball over 3 times. So that's why. The Cardinals got smothered. They had 5 drives last longer than 5 plays in this entire game. They had 5 of their 13 drives last longer than 5 plays in this game. It felt like the Cardinals' offense was heavily leveraged on Josh Dobbs' legs, which is a drastic shift from what we saw in the beginning of the season. But hey, especially considering the DeMarcado kid who's replacing James Conner, who's on IR, he's looked really good. He looked good in this game. They just, I guess, don't believe. But when it came to the passing game, too, they didn't even take advantage of the fact that they've been showing run so frequently that maybe it opens up some stuff down the field because most of the stuff they schemed up was all short yardage things. Josh Dobbs was getting the ball out in under 3 seconds, and sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's hey man, give him a chance to get downfield. You know what I mean? Jackson Smith and Jigba, because DK Metcalf did not play in this game, he got to turn up a little bit. Maybe that means Geno will trust him a little bit more down the field when DK Metcalf eventually does come back. Jackson turned up and showed out. Also, Jake Bobo, who, it's really funny. I watched this YouTuber. His name is TD Barrett, and he recently started a franchise mode on Madden. That's what he does. He's a Madden gamer. He started a franchise mode where he picked literally the worst players in all of Madden. That's what his whole thing was. He was I'm going to play the worst. I'm going to pick the worst players in all of Madden at every single position, and they're going to be on my team. And then he's going to draft players in the normal draft. And one of the players that he has at wide receiver is Mike Bobo, or Jake Bobo, sorry. And it's just really funny because Jake's been turning up this entire season. Jake's rated really low in Madden because he's slow, but I'm sure his stat adjustment is going to be insane because I think he's got back-to-back weeks with a touchdown. And he's also really nasty in the run blocking aspect of it, which I get it. Well, you guys don't care about that, but in the Seahawks offense, run blocking wide receivers are very, very important, which is why they don't get too mad about DK. DK Metcalf throws temper tantrums, and because of the size that he is as a human being, it's essentially assault on defensive backs. He loves to hit people when they're not looking, and it's kind of weird. Nobody's called him dirty. Some of the hits that he throws, though, when he's on the field are kind of weird. I'm are they doing something to you that we can't see? Because that's a real thing. Trying to do something, they're doing little things that annoy DK Metcalf to the point where you're just hey man, you're getting away with something that's like super, like holding, like inside holding on his hand or something like that, or like slapping him on the knee, or like hitting something that has nothing to do with the play. Like I play basketball with a guy and he like taps me, like he taps me on my back and stuff like that when we're playing defense, and I have no idea why he does it, but it annoys the hell out of me. It's something small that doesn't break the rules, but when he's playing defense against me, he like taps me on my shoulder, like in my back, and I'm like, dude, we're trying to play basketball. I have no idea what you're trying to do, right? That's like really important. Maybe that's what's happening, but for the most part, I think DK just likes hitting people. Really, when you're bigger than everybody else, it's easy to adopt that mentality, right? So we move on. Because, like I said before, the Seahawks, essentially, they should have blown the Cardinals out, but it is a divisional win. The only thing that kept them in it was the fact that the Cardinals' defense was actually, like, kind of on point, despite, like, Kenneth Walker getting loose a bunch of times. But I don't know. I need to check this. Most of the pressure that the Cardinals generate is up the middle from the guard position. There's a guy who, he and I go to the same barber that's, like, down the street from my house, and he plays for the Cardinals, Kevin Strong Jr., and he's actually got like 4 sacks this season. It's kind of wild to see. Every time I'm playing every time I watch the Cardinals, I'm like, oh man, Kevin's like looking pretty good. Maybe I'll see him at the barbershop at some point. I don't know when the bye week is coming up, but he's been cooking, man. He was playing with the Tennessee Titans, and now he's playing for the Cardinals, and he looks like he's about to get paid after this season. Anyway, Packers Broncos scores 19-17 in this one. So the Packers have just completely abandoned passing the ball to Aaron Jones, and it's illogical. Makes no sense. It feels like that's what's happening. The Packers actually ran the ball pretty decently in the back half of this game, but to start off with, the offense looked terrible. The Broncos seemingly can get better, right? They have found a way to once again prevent the ball from being in Russell Wilson's hands. They have your boys, McLaughlin and Javonte Williams running the ball effectively, which means, guess what? That's like 10 less passes that Russell Wilson has to throw, which increases your chances of winning the game drastically. I've had to divorce myself from the concept that the Broncos play defense really well, and I think they play the general idea that the Broncos are a lockdown defense. And I think I'm going to have to do the same thing with the Packers. Last year, I know a lot of the fans were disappointed with the defensive the defensive presence overall. I think maybe I need to go in thinking that the Packers defense is like middling. They did not have Jair Alexander in this game, and I feel like that would have made a massive difference because we saw some really nice throws to Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy throughout the course of this one, and taking away one of those two guys would have been massive for the Packers being able to win this one, especially considering they lost by 2 points. In case you didn't see this game, the Packers did the thing again where they play like ass in the first half of the game, and then the last quarter, very similar to the Broncos. The Broncos only show for the first and the fourth quarter. That's the Broncos offense. Sorry, the defense plays all game, but the offense non-existent. They scored no points in the first half, and they scored all 17 of their points in the third and the fourth quarter. It's now the 3 out of the 7, or no. It's like 4 out of the 7 games they've played this season have had this exact formula. Non-existent offense in the first half, totally lights out in the second. So, but the Broncos, one of the few times where you can say that they showed up for all 4 quarters. And I say showed up in like the nicest sense possible. There was not a touchdown in this game until the third quarter. Let you know everything you need to know. The Broncos played like the better football team overall throughout the course of this game. The Packers tried to come on late, and it was just a little too late. Like if the Broncos offense was a hair better, they would not have been able to pull that comeback. I felt like I saw multiple plays in terms of like run defense where Clay Walker got completely scooped up by the offense, which allowed a lot of the successful running that we saw from McLaughlin, who still one of the best stories in the NFL this season. The Packers, like I said before, they showed up in the second half of this game with their run game finally like getting them some room to be able to throw the ball down the field. And this is going back to how I broke down the Buccaneers-Falcons game. The Packers didn't have a catch for longer than 7 yards in the first half of this game. That's not how you win football games. Moving on, Chiefs, Chargers, 31-17. Both of the teams scored a combined 5 touchdowns in the first half of this game. It was insane what we saw. So what happened was, and this is a perfect example, prime example of like somebody showed up for the first half, somebody didn't show up for the second. The offense showed up for the first half and they did not show up for the second, and the defense showed up for the second half but did not show up for the first. And that's how we got to this. Don't let this score deceive you. The Chiefs had one drive that didn't end in points in the first or in the course of this game. And it was an absolutely amazing interception from, you guessed it, Asante Samuels Jr. Yeah, so Travis Kelce committed first-degree murder on the third drive for the Chiefs in this one. Tell me if you've heard this story before. So the Chiefs are on their own 25-yard line, which means they have 75 yards to go to be able to score 76, if you want to be technical about it. 75 yards, they get a touchdown. You give me 75 yards, they give you 6 points on the board. That's how football works. Yeah, Sonny. Travis Kelce had 66 of those 75 yards, and the other, the other 9 came from one pass to Rashid Rice, who got, I think, his first touchdown in the NFL. Yeah. That was pretty wild. Sometimes the Chargers defense forgets to play defense. Unfortunately for them, the Chiefs defense does not. They cooked Justin Herbert's ass when he was sacked in this game 5 different times, and they were all at very important points. So there was only 1 first down sack. There were 2 third ones. So there was, and you tell me if these are the kind of sacks that fuck up your drives. Third down, a 6-yard loss on third down. That's a punt, right? Second down, 13-yard loss. Not great for your success overall. Second down, 6-yard loss. You can kind of come back from that. Still not great. Third down, 6-yard loss. That's a punt, right? 4th and 7, 4th and 8. If you started at 3rd and 1 and you end up at 4th and 7 when that play is over with, you're punting the ball away. First down, they had a 9-yard sack. That sets you up for failure. You know what I mean? On the bright side, the Chargers' fucking run game is back again. Austin Eckler played a little bit in this game, and then he got hurt. But Joshua Kelly, looking like the investment in Joshua Kelly finally paying off. He's gotten a ton of carries over the past couple of weeks, and he has done nothing but get better. He actually scored the first touchdown of this game. That's how good he was. I think it was like a 42-yard rushing touchdown. He just got wide open, and nobody could touch him. It's important. It's been really cool to see Joshua Kelly finally come around. You know, it's going to be important for the Chargers to be able to find somebody who can run the ball when Austin Eckler is hurt, which is seemingly a lot this season, especially considering, he's kind of in contract negotiations, whether people believe it or not. Trying to get that money. Got to get that money. But yeah, which is weird. I'll point this out. When I watch the Chargers run the ball, a lot of their stuff is outside the tackles, and I don't know if it's good deception on their offensive line's part for selling inside run, and then their running backs being able to hop to the outside and find a lot of space, but that's pretty much what it's really come down to. Like, a lot of their runs are to the outside of the tackles, and they're getting into the open space where only the defensive backs are out there defending and stuff like that. So, yeah, the Chiefs are actually... Oh, and by the way, the Chiefs actually started throwing the ball beyond 10 yards in this game. Kind of crazy. Patrick Mahomes had 32 completions. 10 of them were over 10 yards. 7 were over 20. 17 combined passes out of 32 completions over 10 yards down the field. Which, by the way, in case you weren't keeping track at home, Patrick Mahomes had one less completion over 10 yards than Desmond Ridder and Baker Mayfield had combined together for passes that were over 10 yards in their game. Yeah, whatever. No big deal. Most of the completions were underneath because most of the completions were like 15 yards and underneath and all that kind of stuff like that. A lot of yak in this game, mainly because of how the Chargers refused to let the Chiefs cook them over the top. You could argue this actually worked pretty well because they kept the game close. The score was 24-17 with 5:57 to go in the fourth quarter. The Chiefs defense didn't allow a second half Chargers first down until 2 minutes and 38 seconds in the fourth quarter. That's pretty good. The Chargers defense was night and day The Chargers defense was night and day, like I said before. Second half, they gave up 24 points. First half they gave up 24 points. Second half they gave up 7. The Chargers offense couldn't catch a break throughout the course of this game. The final drive came down to a sack, ironically enough, and this is our naming names guy, Drew Tranquill, who, if you're not familiar with him, he used to work for the Chargers last season, and he gets essentially the game-winning sack in this game because, and this is bad news, Nick Bolton looks like he broke his wrist or hurt his wrist. I actually should check on that real quick. Nick Bolton injury, because he went out of the game and he was like screaming into the microphone after he made a tackle on an open. He dislocated his wrist. If you go look at the play, I think he tackled Keenan Allen on like a swing route or something like that. And when he landed, all the force went on his wrist. Like Keenan Allen, his body driven into the ground, his hand was wrapped around the back of Keenan Allen. And this is part of the reason guys wear those wrist guards, even though basically those wrist guards only stop your hand from being able to extend this far. But he landed on his wrist, and it looked like the pressure probably separated, which is crazy to think about, bro. Insane. Justin Herbert messed up his other finger on his other hand. If you haven't known about this, Justin dislocated a finger, I want to say, on his non-throwing hand, and then he messed up a hand. He messed up a finger on his throwing hand. He has like a fracture or something like that. Austin Eckler hurt again. Mentioned that already. Last game of the week. Last game for this week. The Eagles played the Dolphins, 31-17. The Eagles' defensive line, they had themselves quite the feast. And on the menu, Tua Tagovailoa. So first half of this game, Dolphins actually able to generate some offense. They had some great defensive plays. And the problem with this is that the Dolphins they only scored one offensive touchdown. Anyway, nobody heard that. You heard that. They scored one offensive touchdown. The other one was a defensive touchdown by Jerome Baker. Shout out to the dude. On that when he scored one in the third quarter. Made the score, by the way, 17-17. Another example of most deceptive score of the week. 31-17 in this one. So this, like I said before, deep in the third quarter, it's 4 minutes and 2 seconds left. Jerome Baker intercepts a pass that gets deflected up into the air, ties the game up, and then A.J. Brown a couple plays later does the thing where he's like bigger than all the DBs and then just runs into the end zone, makes it 24-17, and Kenneth Gainwell gets a 3-yard rushing touchdown that pulls away. The second half of this game was just the Eagles' defensive line in particular, just teeing off. They have now, by the way, if you think the Dolphins had a problem with this situation, wait until it's not the Dolphins. They just got Kevin Byard, who a lot of people believe is either a top 3 or the number 1 safety in the NFL, depending on who you ask on what day of the week. He is one of the best safeties in the NFL. There's no question about that whatsoever. And I got a strange feeling he's not coming there to just put on the uniform and look cool on the sidelines. It's getting bad. Look. Sun's getting kind of low, kids. Sun's getting kind of low out there, especially if you're a team that does not have a good offense, which I don't know if you heard this or not. The Dolphins' offense is pretty good. They had a lot of... I hated... when I rewatched this game, because I didn't watch it live. I didn't watch any of the games live this past Sunday because I was at a bachelor party and on the way back, and I didn't get back until like 6 o'clock. And when I got back, I was so tired from partying, I just fell asleep in my bed, and I woke up and it was 8 o'clock at night. I watched the final drive for the Dolphins in Sunday Night Football. There's a moment in this game where Jalen Carter rushes Isaiah Wynn so hard that it hurts him to the point where he does not come back into the game. That is one of many examples of the problem with the Dolphins, right? This is what happened last season. They have money invested in good offensive linemen when everybody knows that essentially, especially case in point, like the Packers. The Packers offensive line looks pretty good overall. Consistently, they are one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. They don't have massive drop-offs like a lot of other teams do when it comes to production in terms of being efficient because they have a mixture of money invested in very important parts of their offensive line and offensive linemen they drafted that are actually good. That's the problem with a lot of the Dolphins situation. Most of their offensive linemen are people they've paid for in free agency. They had Teron Armstead, who obviously was the guy that they got last year. Isaiah Wynn, I keep saying Isaiah Wynn, and I don't think that's the right Wynn that I'm talking about. Wynn, Miami Dolphins. Sorry for the sniffling. It is Isaiah Wynn. I'm sorry. Man, that dude's 27. He looks like he's got like whatever. That's one thing about offensive linemen. They look way older all the time. Take it from a guy who used to play offensive line very poorly. I take that back. I got carded like 2 days ago. It was weird. What was I saying? Oh, the Dolphins' offensive line falling apart again. They get guys hurt almost every single week, and it is affecting their ability to get consistent pass offense. The Dolphins, basically the theme of the week was the sketchy to bad offensive lines played high-quality defensive lines across the board. Josh Sweat dominated in the fourth quarter of this game, and in particular, he got the game-winning sack on back-to-back plays. By the way, that's the second time this season that the Eagles have ended a game on back-to-back sacks. Hassan Reddick did it versus the Rams, if I'm not mistaken. Back-to-back sacks against the Rams. And when it rains and pours against the Eagles, man, like their defense is stupid good. A lot of people talking about how the Dolphins are soft or they play cute football. I think what you're looking for is like, once again, when you get bad pass protection, it makes you look like you're soft or whatever. They couldn't run the ball until the second half of this game, and I mean dead serious. Like, Raheem Mostert, I think, had 0 yards at halftime. Or actually, he had negative yards at halftime, if I'm not mistaken. And then he was able to kind of turn it around, get loose on the outside, and make something happen. But the Philadelphia Eagles defense, they tighten it up, baby. They look, whatever weaknesses they got, a lot of teams can't take advantage of. I say that much. They may have some issues. You got to be able to take advantage of the issues, and that takes a combination of coaching and skill. And most teams only have one or the other. I'm sure if the Eagles get their rematch versus the Dolphins, which would only be in the Super Bowl, that would be fun to watch. They get their rematch versus the Dolphins, I'm sure it'll be a totally different story. We're also still waiting. Once again, like I said before, back half of this game is where it really got out of hand. In particular in the fourth quarter, where you go from like the score 17-17 in the third, and then one team literally doubles their score going into after the fourth quarter is over with. We're still waiting on the Dolphins defense to put it all together. We're still waiting on them to be at 100% because we're waiting on, nobody wants to say it's the boogeyman's name, right? Jalen Ramsey waiting in the wings to come out here, and then the Dolphins will have 2 absolute lockdown corners and 1 really good slot corner in Cater Kahu, which that's going to go a long way, man, especially with the pass rush situation. Jalen Phillips showed up in this game big time. That's what they've been missing too, like having somebody else to pair up with Bradley Chubb. Jalen Phillips cooked in this game. And that's been the biggest issue. Like the pass rush has only been coming from 2 guys essentially. They need more than 2 guys. That's what makes the Eagles so deadly. Like you put they've got closers. You know what I mean? Like in a baseball team, they got dudes that are like, oh yeah, man. You know, like we all put our names in a hat, and basically like our D-line coach just pulls a name out, and that's who goes out there and plays left end, and that's who goes out there and plays right end. It doesn't help that they also have like 2 of the most athletic defensive tackles to ever play football. By definition of like what happened, by metrics that happen at the combine, not great for your personal well-being if you're a quarterback. Anyway, on that note, another week passes. Have fun watching Thursday Night Football. I'm out of here. I got stuff to do. You got stuff to do. Stay safe. Drink water. Wash your ass. Be nice to your friends. Do good. And most importantly, go home, Roger.